The situation has reached a critical turning point that may permanently alter the landscape of international security. As the United States and Israel continue their intense military campaign against Iran, authorities in Tehran have issued a stark warning. They now plan to carry out direct attacks on U.S. territory itself. This bold announcement has sent shockwaves through global capitals, raising the specter of severe consequences and widespread violence if tensions spiral further. Tehran has made it clear that it intends to respond with direct offensive operations targeting the American mainland. This represents one of the clearest and most direct warnings the Islamic Republic has ever directed at the continental United States. For many years, Iranian strategy focused on indirect methods, supporting armed groups, launching digital intrusions, disrupting shipping in key waterways like the Strait of Hormuz, firing missiles at American partners in the region, and conducting operations against U.S. personnel overseas. The idea of striking deep inside American borders using long-range missiles, submarine-based weapons, advanced gliding projectiles, or other covert means like cargo vessels or hidden operatives remained mostly in the category of warnings meant to deter rather than a stated plan of action. That approach has changed dramatically. High-ranking officers in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, especially those tied to aerospace and special operations units, have shifted from general talk of harsh payback to specific mentions of the U.S. homeland as a valid objective. Government-linked news channels such as Press TV and agencies close to the IRGC have aired reports featuring military figures who describe such strikes as realistic and bound to happen if certain boundaries are violated. These statements are not random. They seem carefully organized, echoed on various outlets, and backed by religious addresses in key locations like Tehran, Mashhad, and Qom. Clerics aligned with top leadership have added a spiritual dimension, portraying potential responses as a required duty under Islamic principles of self-defense and equal retribution. The timing ties directly to a series of aggressive U.S. moves. A Virginia-class submarine used powerful torpedoes to sink an Iranian frigate in the Indian Ocean, marking the first instance in this confrontation where American naval power eliminated a significant Iranian surface ship outside the Persian Gulf area. Many crew members lost their lives, and Iranian narratives quickly labeled the incident as outright state-sponsored terror instead of a justified defensive or protective action. Following that, airstrikes, likely involving stealth bombers like the B-2 and carrier-based F-35s from the Arabian Sea, have hit command centers, hidden missile depots, nuclear-related facilities, and homes of high officials. Inside Iran, these operations are seen as a full-scale effort to cripple the government and permanently weaken its armed forces. Iranian leaders now seem convinced that their long-standing policy of avoiding direct homeland assaults, as long as the U.S. stayed out of Iranian core territory, has been rendered obsolete by Washington's readiness to hit inside Iran and in open seas. The reasoning follows a pattern of matching escalation. If American assets can operate freely against Iranian land and vessels, Iran must prove it can do the same in return. Official comments stress both available technology and firm determination. Discussions point to missiles like the Sejil-2 and Khorramshahr-4, which use solid fuel and reportedly cover distances over 2,000 kilometers, along with recent submarine cruise missile tests and undisclosed hypersonic systems. Experts in the West question whether these could consistently overcome American defensive layers, but simply voicing the intent publicly changes the overall strategic picture. This stance also carries heavy weight within Iran's internal politics. Certain hardline groups in the military and religious circles have criticized past leaders for appearing too soft after events like the killing of a key commander, the accidental shoot-down of a civilian airliner initially blamed elsewhere, and repeated attacks on nuclear experts and facilities. By publicly pledging homeland retaliation, those in charge aim to rebuild trust with supporters, show strength despite serious setbacks, and make further U.S. moves seem far more expensive. However, the strong wording could trap decision-makers. Failing to follow through without a credible exit might damage their standing at a time when citizens face damaged services, electricity shortages, fuel issues, and growing civilian losses. Around the world, the announcement has sparked urgent concern in various governments. NATO countries with personnel in the Gulf region have discreetly boosted security measures, while partners in the Pacific are reviewing defenses originally built against other threats. Intelligence agencies in places like Washington, London, Tel Aviv, and Canberra are focusing more on potential Iranian networks, smuggling paths, and digital activities that might precede or support physical operations. the White House has refrained from directly addressing the homeland-specific language in public, sticking to statements about targeting Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities. Privately, though, high-level discussions have reportedly broadened to cover domestic defense possibilities once viewed as remote risks. Iranian spokespeople have repeatedly said Washington will deeply regret its choices and have called openly for American casualties. The term bitterly regret keeps appearing in Iranian communications as the U.S.-Israeli actions intensify. It serves as both a mind game and a message to local and nearby audiences, hinting at responses meant to inflict deep, lasting damage, strategic, financial, and personal, on the United States. Earlier statements often included limits on scale or location, but recent ones drop those boundaries, suggesting actions aimed at high visibility and emotional impact beyond just military targets. Even more notable is the direct talk of spilling blood. Prominent military voices and religious figures on state broadcasts have moved from vague promises of tough consequences to straightforward demands for American lives to be taken. A clip that spread widely shows an IRGC officer saying the loss of their own requires the same from enemy leaders and citizens. In another primetime segment, a scholar cited religious sources to argue that fairness demands equal sacrifice, holding ordinary Americans accountable for supporting their government's policies. This shift in language signals a clear ramp-up. In the past, even after major provocations, Iranian warnings usually avoided endorsing harm to civilians or broad bloodshed, instead pointing fingers at specific groups like Zionist forces or imperialist rulers. Now, the willingness to discuss casualties, military and civilian alike, fits into a story of all-out conflict. Government media has aired visuals pairing ruined Iranian areas and mourning families with scenes of American cities, quietly suggesting similar devastation could arrive on U.S. shores. The messaging pursues several connected goals: rebuilding credibility after battlefield reverses, rallying the Iranian public by framing the fight as a vital national and faith-based battle calling for unity and sacrifice, pressuring U.S. public opinion through fear of domestic attacks to push for reduced involvement, and reassuring allied groups like Hezbollah, Houthis, and Iraqi factions that Central Command is fully engaged, possibly spurring bolder moves from them. Some voices inside Iran, including moderate ones on secure channels, warn that such heated statements could invite preemptive U.S. or Israeli action against remaining critical sites. Still, the prevailing view appears to be that caution has backfired, with American submarines and aircraft targeting Iranian assets in various domains. Holding back only encouraged more pressure. By embracing talk of casualties and regret, Tehran hopes to reverse the balance, making ongoing U.S. efforts look too dangerous to sustain. Whether this approach halts operations, triggers massive retaliation, or drags out a prolonged struggle is the key uncertainty in this fast-worsening environment. A U.S. submarine used torpedoes to sink an Iranian frigate in the Indian Ocean, resulting in dozens of deaths. The engagement took place during the dark hours of a night without moonlight, roughly 200 nautical miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz, far from the usual zones of tension in the Persian Gulf. One Virginia-class attack submarine, among the Navy's stealthiest and most capable vessels, approached without detection to ideal launch distance. It fired 2 Mk-48 advanced torpedoes, guided by wire and sound seeking, that can move swiftly while tracking their mark. The first hit near the ship's engine areas, and the second exploded under the hull, causing a severe structural break known for its whipping force that tears vessels apart. The ship was a modern Alvan-class frigate, armed with anti-ship missiles, a main gun, and basic air defenses. Iranian reports described it as part of routine duties protecting trade routes and maintaining presence in distant areas. At the time, it moved at about 14 knots on a southwestern path during what Tehran called standard navigation drills. The blast started fires in engineering sections, followed by explosions of munitions and fuel. Crew efforts to control damage failed quickly. The ship listed heavily and sank bow first within minutes. Later, satellite views revealed spreading oil and floating wreckage over miles. Death counts from IRGC Navy sources and shared crew records ranged from 41 to 58, including officers who stayed below to fight flooding. Fewer than 30 survivors were picked up by passing ships and a Pakistani support vessel answering emergency calls. Many victims were young mandatory service sailors, a point stressed in Iranian reports to highlight the tragedy of what they called senseless aggression in neutral waters. Examinations of bodies pointed to injuries from blasts, fire, drowning, and smoke. Selecting the Indian Ocean sent a clear message. Striking beyond Iran's heavily defended Gulf zones, full of mines, small boats, and coastal missiles, showed U.S. ability to project force where Tehran felt more secure. It destroyed the notion that distance equaled safety. U.S. statements framed it as measured response to prior Iranian interference with shipping, though no direct link to this ship was detailed publicly. Officials noted the submarine followed tight protocols, confirming the target as military before firing. For Iran, the incident went beyond losing a vessel. These frigates symbolized extended naval capability and national strength, with far-flung deployments promoted as evidence of global reach and independence from U.S. control. The sinking hit morale hard. Large funerals in port cities featured crowds, dark flags, and anti-American slogans shown live. The IRGC leveraged it for enlistment pushes, tying duty to patriotism and vengeance. It also exposed gaps in Iran's submarine detection, despite patrols and sensors. The attacker slipped in and out unseen. The strike reflected evolving U.S. Navy methods. Virginia-class subs with advanced sensors, masts, and missile options alongside torpedoes handle sensitive tasks in risky areas. Using torpedoes reduced chances of harming nearby neutrals while guaranteeing heavy damage. Intelligence reviews noted no immediate U.S. surface ships nearby, underlining the operation's low-profile design. U.S. air operations have repeatedly struck Iranian command, missile positions, and key facilities over the past week. The aerial effort has run non-stop for 7 days, with intensity and scope catching many by surprise. Early phases targeted top figures using B-2 bombers from distant bases, refueled in flight, to drop deep penetrating bombs on fortified bunkers and homes of missile and nuclear overseers. Some involved massive bunker busters burrowing through thick concrete. Initial reviews from satellites and other sources confirmed several senior deaths, including generals overseeing missile programs in the first 2 days. Later efforts focused on Iran's missile arsenal and support systems. Carrier-based F-35s and land-based F-15s flew numerous missions against buried storage, mobile launchers in open areas, and fixed sites. Long-range standoff munitions kept planes safe from remaining air defenses. Images revealed craters at bases near Tabriz, Kermanshah, and Semnan, with blasts indicating destroyed fuel and warhead stocks. Targets soon included energy sites, transport links, and control networks. Refineries faced multiple hits, cutting output sharply per monitoring data. Power stations serving military areas went offline, causing widespread outages. Bridges, radars, and communication lines were systematically damaged to disrupt coordination and recovery. Electronic jamming from specialized aircraft forced reliance on less secure backups. The sustained pace aims to keep Iran off balance, preventing reorganization or deeper hiding. Night missions dominated using U.S. advantages in darkness tech. Refueling orbits extended flight times. Efforts appeared designed to limit civilian harm in cities, though Iranian claims cited residential impacts near bases. Iran dispersed remaining missiles to rough terrain, set up fakes, and fired older types toward Israel to demonstrate persistence. Air defenses engaged but failed against stealthy attackers, losing some drones and planes in attempts. Estimates suggest major losses, perhaps 60%, of medium and long-range missile systems in the opening week. Command gaps from leadership deaths added hesitation in lower ranks amid jammed communications. Iran's foreign minister condemned the U.S. for creating a risky example by striking in open waters. In a broadcast speech and follow-up talks, the minister argued the submarine attack breached fundamental rules on sea freedom and limits on force without immediate danger. He described the frigate as conducting legal duties in non-contested areas with no aggressive intent, calling the sinking pure aggression. By hitting a national warship in international space without any blockade, the U.S. blurred lines between peace and war, potentially justifying similar moves against American ships anywhere. He referenced UN sea law on high seas rights, warning this could unsettle trade, encourage rogue groups, and weaken the global system America helped establish. At home, it fueled patriotic anger by highlighting perceived double standards, criticizing Gulf actions while acting far away. He pushed for a UN meeting, but doubted results due to veto power, suggesting Iran might act in remote areas to balance deterrence. A respected Ayatollah on national television demanded the shedding of Trump's blood and framed it as a major divine challenge. In a widely viewed evening program on state TV, an influential cleric close to supreme leadership spoke passionately against a backdrop of mourning symbols and sailor portraits. He likened U.S. actions to historical invasions on Islam, tying current grief to past sacrifices. He called explicitly for Trump's blood as rightful justice, citing legal religious rules holding the president accountable for approvals. The demand was stressed as a communal obligation to uphold fairness. He presented the struggle as God's test to distinguish loyalty and strengthen the faithful through hardship, quoting scripture on endurance and triumph. The message blended faith with military commitment, countering views of vulnerability amid losses. Replays amplified it as a call to rally, assuring hardliners of no retreat. Military representatives confirmed approval for confronting U.S. forces anywhere. In unified briefings and interviews, IRGC officials announced that national security leadership had authorized broader engagement rules allowing direct strikes on American military targets worldwide. One general stated no U.S. installation, vessel, or plane is now exempt after the frigate loss and command hits. They justified it by pointing to U.S. far-reaching operations, insisting on equal latitude. Mentions included tighter links between air, sea, and allied networks for extended reach. Officials cited dispersed missiles, distant sub-patrols, and combined cyber tools as supports. The statement targeted both internal critics wanting fiercer response and external watchers, showing Iran would no longer limit reactions regionally. They described the shift as permanent, a necessary update given crossed boundaries. Iran has extended operations against U.S. Gulf positions and sent fresh missile and drone attacks toward Israel. Soon after the frigate incident, Iran ramped up on several fronts. Allied groups in Iraq and Syria increased rocket and drone fire on bases like Al-Assad, Tanf, and Erbil. Dozens in one day caused limited damage and sheltering. In the Gulf, small boats and coastal missiles challenged U.S. groups near Hormuz, though defenses deflected them. At the same time, new ballistic missiles and drones targeted Israel from Iran and Yemen. Most were stopped by defenses, but some hit near bases and civilian sites in the north, triggering alerts. Iranian coverage called it the start of layered retaliation, Gulf actions for naval losses, Israeli ones for allied support. It showed sustained multi-front pressure despite U.S. hits on command and stocks. Certain Iranian projectiles have crossed into NATO areas, stirring worries of expanding disorder. Amid barrages on Israel, some short-range missiles and drones strayed into Jordanian space near borders before interception or impact. Separately, drones from Iran entered Turkish airspace over a province for minutes until shot down by fighters. Turkey called it serious violations, raising border alerts. NATO expressed worry, noting alliance territory strikes could trigger consultations. Gulf states hosting U.S. forces grew anxious over possible further drift or targeting of routes drawing them in. Iran blamed technical errors from jamming, but avoided promising restraint if pressures mount. North Korea delivered strong criticism of U.S. and Israeli conduct, but gave no sign of active steps against America yet. State media issued statements and editorials branding the campaign as brutal imperialism and threats to stability. Pyongyang accused Washington of plotting regime overthrow disguised as non-proliferation, linking it to their own experiences. They called the frigate sinking and leadership hits high seas robbery and terror, expressing support for Iran against dominance. Rhetoric stayed intense but avoided specific commitments like tech sharing or joint moves. Commentators saw it as measured, no direct Pacific threats. Focus remained on internal readiness, using the crisis to affirm nuclear policies. No unusual diplomacy hinted at alignment, with views that Pyongyang appreciates diverted attention but avoids risks given peninsula focus. To conclude this critical update, the pieces connect in this explosive standoff. Iran's open pledge of mainland strikes arises from crushing U.S. submarine action against their frigate and non-stop airstrikes eroding leadership, missiles, and systems, driving promises of worldwide engagement, intensified base attacks, renewed Israeli barrages spilling into NATO zones, and fiery religious and official demands for American blood over risky precedents in neutral seas. North Korea's sharp rebukes add intensity without direct action, highlighting a globe edging toward wider instability where traditional restraints weaken and partnerships face strain. This goes beyond local conflict. It's a high-stakes contest shadowed by nuclear risks, calling for close watch as human lives and global order stand at risk in unprecedented ways. For direct, uncensored insights from the evolving situation, subscribe to Geoff Desk immediately. Click subscribe, enable alerts, and share your views in the comments. Do you believe Iran's warnings will push America to back off or spark a larger global war? Let me know below and keep watching for more straightforward coverage.